Welcome to Almar Tradewinds Local Voices program. Today we have Warren Green on our show. He's been on before, and he writes an article called Health and Nutrition Strategies, What's in Your Diet? Hello, Warren.
Hi, Ken. Good talking to you.
How's things going with you?
Pretty good.
Yeah.
We're a little sequestered, but really not. We can go out, but we're kind of hanging in.
Yeah, same here. Kind of just taking it easy and trying to stay away from as many people as possible.
Yeah.
One of the main reasons I wanted to call you and get you on the program was this pandemic thing that we're all living right now is something that's kind of related to your articles. You're always talking about the immune system and how your diet affects your immune system. And why don't you just lay something out, for people that haven't heard about it before, a little bit about what your theories are on your diet, how it affects your immune system.
Yeah, well, my column usually talks about unidentified and unlabeled substances that weaken the immune system, actually. So we've did that over the years. In fact, 5 years ago, I actually wrote that about a pandemic and what the government had in its arsenal to deal with the pandemic. I always thought that the antibiotics would be a problem because, once you get immune to the antibiotics, what happens after that? If in fact there was a pandemic, not that a viral pandemic would respond to antibiotics, but it weakens your immune system, and that's the issue. You always are going to have epidemics and pandemics. Throughout history, we've had 3 in the last 15 years. So that's my focus has always been on what's in the diet that might be compromising or weakening your immune system.
Well, the interesting thing about this pandemic is that it's a novel virus. So, in other words, nobody is known to have immunity to it. It's a new type virus, where the regular flu, everybody's had the flu at one time, so there's a little bit of immunity built up. And so when you look at the symptoms of this, it's all across the charts. It's almost like this virus attacks the weakest part of your system.
Well, that's exactly right, and it's novel. That's why the immune system is the only thing that can protect you. Mm-hmm. Because your body, and so when what happens is once you are infected by it, it takes a while for your body to rev up, your immune system to rev up, to be able to recognize it and start protecting you or attacking it. And by that, if you already have a weakened immune system, and that's my position is that most of us do. If you are hypertensive, we eat bad food and everything else, but you don't know you have a weak immune system until you get sick.
I saw something interesting today. I read it. I don't know how true it is. It's something new, but they're saying now that they're thinking that they can get blood from a person that's had this pandemic, and it has antibodies that can help somebody that is just getting it. So that's kind of what right along the lines of what you're saying is your body starts building immunity up, and apparently they're gonna use the antibodies to come up with some kind of vaccine.
Sure, that's similar to with cancer immunotherapy. And in fact, I wrote an article about that where they were using fecal material and putting it into people that were having digestive problems. Same principle. Once your body recognizes it, it could deal with it. But the problem is it has to recognize them. I kind of disagree with what they're saying about, well, it's brand new. I tend to believe it's probably been around, and a lot of people have an immunity. I'll bet when they start testing, that's why I believe they have to test everybody, just like they do with syphilis. I mean, it's the same. Syphilis, you can't even get married unless you declare that you haven't had syphilis or anything else. And I remember when you used to have a birth test. So I think it's perfectly reasonable to test everybody in the country.
Yeah, that's true. When they say there's no immunity, there's no known immunity. I can almost bet. I feel the same way you do. That somewhere somebody's walking around, and there might be a number of people that have immunity to this thing, and it's just a matter of finding them.
So how in the world would you have the community spread when people have never, with people in a nursing home that hadn't been out of the country in 10 years? And the people that are around them haven't been, or that's my thing. I just think that that's not true.
Well, it may be just that it's just not known yet. You never know. This may be a virus that went around, hundreds of years ago in some little local area, and it just never got out.
Or it's one that got here and mutated.
Could be. I was looking at something they're talking about. Because of this global warming. There's viruses in in Antarctica. They're finding in the permafrost there's viruses that are coming out of the permafrost now that they've never seen, that are ancient viruses. So it's possible it could just be something that has just reoccurred. But anyway, tell us a little bit about what your recommendations are for your diet to help strengthen your immune system.
I like to talk about what you shouldn't put in your body, and then you can kind of figure out what you want to replace that in. Like arsenic. Arsenic is in 90% of domestic poultry feed. So, and it's in there to control parasites. Well, I would probably kind of reduce my consumption of poultry, because I don't know who the 10% is that doesn't use arsenic, and they don't have to tell you in the feed. So I would probably reduce the use of that. Glyphosate, that's in most of your grains. I probably would have to cut down on refined carbohydrates, period. And in fact, it's probably a good idea to reduce it anyway. But I would cut down on that. Clearly antibiotics and dairy. And you're going to get most of your antibiotics from your dairy products like cheese and milk and such. So I would reduce those. I think that the best diet you could possibly have is the Mediterranean diet. And I modify mine by removing some of that, because they allow you to eat red meat, some, and poultry, some, and dairy, some. I think that you shouldn't do that, particularly while this virus is going around, so that your immune system is not working to protect you against these substances.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, it's interesting. You look at there's so many products now that you see that are called organic. They say no antibiotics, no hormones in the beef. And so what you're saying is basically if you are going to eat beef and chicken, find a local supplier, somebody that what they feed, local farmer. And I guess the backup plan would be to buy as much organic as you can, if you can afford it anyway.
If you can't find organic red meat, then I'd go with the plant-based alternatives, because they're quite good, at least until this thing dies down. I mean, some of the if you look how the industry is going, they have alternative beef, alternative pork, alternative shrimp, alternative chicken. I mean, and the Tyson's is coming out with an alternative chicken, so you don't have to do animal tissue. And now you don't know where this virus is. They found the virus in a tiger in the Bronx Zoo.
A lot of our meat industry is heading overseas, especially to China. I know you had mentioned that they raise chickens here and then kill them and send them to China and process them and send them back. It seems like that's something really wrong if that's economically feasible.
Well, the tankers and these containers are going back empty. So we have trade imbalance. So they don't have anything to go. China delivers all of this stuff here, and then they're going back empty. So it's a financial imbalance. They were approved by the USDA that their plants were equal to ours now for processing. So it was economically beneficial for us to send our chickens there for them to process it and to come back. But that we knew that was going to happen when they were going to have a problem because we took out country of origin labeling. That was a clue that was in the works. And that was interesting because that's the first time I've ever seen a law that was actually rescinded. Not amended or anything. They rescinded the law. It was a law, a blacksmith law, and they actually rescinded the law.
Like you say, it adds a lot of time to the processing. It's interesting that who knows how old the chicken is that you're getting, in the store now. Turnaround time has to be a long time.
Yeah. Well, it's a frozen product. They put it in refrigerated things. They get it over there. Whatever. Who knows how they're preserving it? Is what you're saying. I have no idea. I mean, I think that's the problem anyway with with what's happening with it. You can't have these substances throughout the food chain that makes your body or your immune system have to work. So because it won't be able to. When I looked at these outbreaks, the infection levels and stuff, maybe New York has more deaths than probably the whole world, and they probably have more infections. New York State has more infections than any country in the world. I truly believe that it's part of the diet. And now they're saying in the African American community. Well, I think it's absolutely right. And I tried to correlate yesterday. I was doing some research on that, and I looked to where it was happening, like in Michigan, like Detroit and New Orleans, and everywhere that is breaking out, there's a food desert.
Yeah, well, a lot of people, especially lower income. I mean, they go to the store and they see, say, let's take an example, an organic chicken that's $8 or $9, and then they see one on sale that's $6. They go for the $6 one. Well, you get what you pay for, but if you don't have the money, I mean, that's basically what they have to do. And the poorer areas definitely, in my experience, what I've seen is they definitely go for the lowest cost food, and it's probably not the most healthy.
Well, how can they know if the government doesn't have a responsibility to identify?
Yeah, because there's no labels. I mean, like you say, there's organic, and when you see organic, you assume that what they're telling you is correct.
You're right to, because when you look at the organic law, you're not supposed to have these substances in there. So you have to trust the government. But then we have acting people there heading these agencies. They always compromise. What happens is they start eating away at the laws as they are written. The lobbyists come in and we need to control parasites. We want to use 10% arsenic in the feed. Well, if they're asked, well, will that harm the? Well, no, because now arsenic is allegedly naturally occurring. I never bought that, but that's how this government works. And they were lead in the plumbing. Well, they knew that was toxic, but for the greater good, we'll do that. Asbestos. And I know me and your father were on the same ship. They knew asbestos was toxic, and they knew it was a problem. But for the greater good, they used it. They exposed us, but we wouldn't. The exposure wouldn't happen until down the line, many years down, and then maybe it might not bother us. You have companies now that appear to have funds for this kind of thing.
Yeah, there's definitely they roll the dice on a lot of things and say, well, do we take the gamble? Is what they're doing. They're saying, well, we're going to take the gamble that it's not going to affect so many people, and in a lot of ways, I mean, I can understand that because you don't really know for 20 years
right.
Sometimes. I mean, it's like glyphosate. You know, I've always thought that that's something that you spray on, weeds, and it totally wipes them out, like that stuff does. You know, that they genetically engineer plants that the glyphosate won't kill, and then they spray it all over them and kills everything else. Well, now they're starting to find little traces of it in cereal and all kinds of grains and stuff. So
beer,
yeah.
Even in beer.
Yeah, even in beer. Yeah, that's right. So who knows what it's going to be like in 20, 30 years? That may be the next DDT. I mean, we won't know till then.
Well, they always knew, and see, I think they took the risk, and this is a risk-based economy, and that's why I have always said that, and not to sound like I'm a socialist, but I think that healthcare can't be fee for service because they know that people are going to become ill with some of these toxic substances in the food chain. For sure, people are going to get ill. And I don't think it's fair, but if they get ill, they have to pay to get well. That's not fair.
Yeah. Well, yeah, a lot of it is population too. I mean, one thing that you do have to give the industry is these the corporates, meat producers and the corporate farmers and all of that. They're feeding a lot of people. I mean, the population of the United States has doubled since roughly 1960, 1961, somewhere around there. And that's quite a strain. I mean, if we went back to, family farms, there might be a lot of people starved. So I think what you're saying is because of the fact that they've gone to corporate farming, they've had to feed so many people that they've just had to start taking some chances on a lot of things. And hopefully they'll find a better way, with all this technology coming along with robotics. Instead of spraying a field with, say glyphosate, they can have, robots go out and destroy the weeds somehow, through little weed whackers or whatever. I saw a thing on Facebook about that. And so maybe technology will get us out of this in time. Get us away from these chemicals.
They actually, and I have to go back into all of my articles, but in Ireland they are testing. They did a pesticide without glyphosate that was safe for humans, and they're testing it now. So there's things that they could do to fix it, but it's not going to be viable. They're not going to. The food industry is really interesting because, like sodium nitrite, they know it's carcinogenic. That's what cures the ham and the bacon. They know it, and they know that they could make it without sodium nitrite. But who's going to buy it? Because people really don't know that it's dealing in parts per billion, parts per million, and as long as it was controlled by American manufacturers, I didn't have a problem. But now it's China, and they control the industry. I don't get it. I don't think it's very, and particularly when a company like Oscar Mayer can make a cured product that doesn't have a carcinogenic.
Well, a lot of that is people like you too. I mean, your article reaches a lot of people, and it educates. And hopefully there's somebody that reads your articles, goes to the store and picks up a package of bacon and goes, well, I'm not going to buy this because it has all this stuff in it, and they make the choice to get something a little bit healthier. And that's probably what it's going to take is a lot of people doing that to change the industry.
Well, I think it will have to because it's the diet is the major problem for the Western diet, particularly, is the problem with this virus now. And I'm saying if you're going to put $2 to $4 trillion into the economy, you might want to revamp the whole healthcare system. You might want to do. I mean, they're going to have to pour money into this thing. It's going to be more than $4 trillion anyway. So if that's the case, why shouldn't the healthcare system be totally revamped, and that be it? Now it's not. It didn't damage It didn't damage these other economies like it damaged ours. Just because of, if you're infected with this thing, it costs $32,000 to treat it. The test costs over $3,000. So they don't want to test everybody, okay, because the test costs over $3,000. I don't, and we have an employer-based healthcare system. But some of the employers are now, they can't afford it no more. So what happens now? I don't know.
I don't either. The problem is we've spent ourselves in the hole. We're getting into economics a little bit, but we're what, 24 trillion in debt now after this last bailout, and we're 24 trillion in the hole. I mean, it's hard to see how they're going to get out of this, and
I can't see it, but I think it's primarily a result of healthcare.
Well, it's health care, and you gotta look at it this way. Somebody like Italy or Spain, they have single payer. The main reason they can afford single payer is somebody is paying for their defense. We spend trillions of dollars on bombs and tanks and stuff defending the world, and that allows these little countries to be able to have their health care. We're basically, defending them, and we can't afford health care. It's kind of...
That's true, but every manufacturer we have and all of these producers in the United States, they go in with probably 5 or 10% of their budget has to include health care for their employees. That's insane. It doesn't make sense.
Well, yeah, like you say, a company overseas, say in Spain, can make a product, and if they don't have that healthcare burden, it could reflect in the price of their product.
How do we compete?
Yeah, how do we compete?
That's exactly right. That's right. So now this thing, I don't see how we can be competitive again in the next decade. I know the president is saying we will be, but how do you do that? They didn't lose what we lost.
Well, like I say, they're just different systems, smaller countries. I mean, you take something like Italy. I mean, Italy, their population is the size of some of our states. I mean, it's a whole lot easier to manage a smaller country that is socially on the same page. Where the United States, we can't agree on anything. I mean, so it's going to be a long road, and if we do, this is the way I look at it. If we do go to single payer, we're probably going to wind up just going ahead and giving up our Social Security and going with a some type of income.
Absolutely agree.
Yeah, I know. And the thing is we're going to wind up having to give up a lot of things because they're not only going to have to go to single payer health care, they're probably going to have to turn around and give a universal basic income and free college. I mean, they might as well just go ahead and do it because we almost have to. It's that big of a drastic change. And
with 50% single payer now, you're going to be in the single payer system, 10, 15 years?
Not even that long.
When you're 65?
Yeah, about 5 years.
Okay. So what would be the harm in advancing that? That's my position, and I think they can advance it in 5-year segments and absorb Medicaid or Medicare for all is a good system because I have it. But the TRICARE and the VA, all of that could be absorbed into the system. So it already exists. I don't understand all of the dollars that they're talking about that it would cost to make the transition, since 93% of the doctors practicing already have clients in the single payer system. It already exists. So the administrative cost of minimum, it already exists. So now we're talking about special interests keeping it, like the insurance company. What exactly purpose do they serve?
Well, see, the thing is that the insurance industry employs a lot of people, and the medical industry employs a lot of people, and I think what you're going to look at is they're just going to have to nationalize that industry. I mean, no matter how you look at it, they're nationalizing the banks now.
Oh, right.
So when you get a certain amount, what's going to happen is there's going to be a teetering point, and what's going to happen is the private sector is just not going to be enough to raise enough taxes to keep the government going. So they're going to have to nationalize everything, and that's where we're heading.
I think that the administration of it could be the insurance companies. It doesn't have to mean, I don't mean the federal government itself. I think they're just managing it, period. And I think, and the insurance company can do exactly what they're doing anyway, except that now you're absorbing people. I think to start at 65 and down to 60, when people are 60, they're going to be into the system anyway. So they're always going to be phased in, and you just start phasing them in a little early.
Yeah, well, that's I believe that's Biden announced that part of his platform yesterday.
Well, he wants to keep the Affordable Care Act. I think it's unconstitutional anyway. But so he wants to keep that. I don't think you have to keep it. I think what Bernie was saying absolutely right. Let's just phase it. He wants to do it all in one big gulp. I don't think that's feasible either. So in 5-year increments where you're absorbing things like CHIPS and the VA and TRICARE, all of these hospitals, now they did it in the state of Virginia or New York, I'm saying. New York, Cuomo did it. All of these hospitals are answerable to the state, which is great. So they mobilize around that. There's going to be other pandemics or epidemics. That's going to happen. So I don't think this country can go through another one of these.
Well, we're really unprepared for the one we're in. If it's any worse than this, it's going to really be bad. And this is typical government. I mean, they're shipping masks that are expired in 2010 that are dry rotted.
Yeah, we got an administration that they're not good managers, and they only look at one segment of the whole economy. And they didn't anticipate this, of course, but now they don't know what to do. Well, we got to get everybody working. Well, how do you do that?
Oh, it's definitely a problem. I mean, it's they keep pushing this thing that there's this pent up demand, and all of a sudden things are going to take off when they declare this thing over. And there's a lot of people that are broke. They're going to have to make money before they can spend. When you get behind, it's hard to catch up.
Fees are coming out of theirs already. I thought that this administration was very late. They knew about it.
Yeah.
I knew about it. They knew about it easily at the beginning of the year, and they dragged their feet in it now. Now they're denying that they even knew. It's amazing to me that people can believe it. But they were negligent in responding to this thing. The same thing happened with SARS and MERS. They knew about it. They stopped it. And Ebola. They actually stopped. So they had to do it.
Right. I remember.
They had to stop this thing, and they didn't. And now they've shut down the country. They're responsible for trillions of dollars because of their mismanagement.
Yeah. Well, it's one of my favorite sayings is if a swamp billy like me down here in the swamp of Carolina can know about something, how come they don't know? And I knew about this thing in early January. I mean, it was all over the news, so there's no excuse for them not knowing because I knew about it.
Well, like I said, my 4th article with the trade winds, I wrote about it. I wrote that I asked what was in the toolbox to handle this.
Yeah, and at one time they were really on it. I mean, George Bush, he actually did, get the strategic stockpile going with medical equipment, and now they're seeing masks that are expired in 2010. So that means, Obama's guilty too. I mean, they didn't replace those masks in 2010, and Obama was leading the country at that time. So it's just typical government screw up.
Well, they were. See, this is actually connected with the whole government system. You're absolutely right. In 2000, my ex-boss, Maggie Glavin, was appointed to the U.S. Office of Counterterrorism Policy and Planning. So they already were planning, and they were planning for outbreaks. That's what the Centers for Disease Control is. That's what they're supposed to do. So they had a structure already in place. She came from agriculture and went over there when they was expecting manufactured viruses. But it's the same principle. Whether it's natural or manufactured, they should have been ready. They had to be ready. I don't get it. That's my problem with it. Now, I'm not sure that this wasn't manufactured, because with these new technologies like CRISPR and stuff, you can do gene modification with ease. Any biology student understands that.
Yeah, I saw they were going to crack down on that a little bit. There were some kids doing some things that were a little bit scary. You know, there's people doing bodybuilding. I think I saw something where a guy was bodybuilding, and he was a biology student. He said, "Well, I'm going to take and change some of my genes around so I can have more muscle mass." I mean, you know, that's scary stuff.
And this is a bodybuilder doing it. I mean, what could a biological terrorist do?
Well, that's the problem. I mean, you know, they're going to have to. There's so much of this technology that they're going to have to get a handle on. You know, I think there's a fine line between the freedom to learn, the responsibility of government to keep it under control. I mean, it is, you know, it's like the Manhattan Project. You know, they don't let just anybody run around with uranium. So they're going to have to come up with some kind of an outline to make this more secure. Let's wrap this up. We'll get you back again after this thing is over with, and maybe we can get some more ideas going.
Okay, my friend.
All righty, Warren Green.